Welcome to There's a Lesson in Here Somewhere. Conversations with interesting people with fascinating stories to tell and from which we can draw important lessons. Here are your hosts, Jamie Serino and Peter Carucci.
Hello and welcome to There's a Lesson in Here Somewhere. I'm Jamie Serino.
And I'm Peter Carucci.
And we're here today with Despina Kontos, a professor and cancer researcher at Columbia University. And we're going to talk with her about her research combining artificial intelligence and medical imaging. It's really fascinating. Despina, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Despina, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So as you said, I'm a professor at Columbia University. I have a background in computer science, and you may be wondering what a computer scientist is doing in a medical center. I'm trying to basically combine computer science with medicine, and especially in this time, use artificial intelligence in the context of cancer imaging and cancer research to help clinicians in their medical decision making. So I run a research lab at Columbia and have some other responsibilities as well in overseeing some of these initiatives for the medical center at Columbia University and more broadly. And it's exciting. It's fun. It's been a great career so far, and been doing this for many years now. I was at the University of Pennsylvania before joining Columbia on 2004, and now I'm here in New York.
Great. So you've been sort of at this for a little while, and in some ways ahead of the curve, but I guess in some ways with the curve, because we heard about artificial intelligence, and then we sort of stopped hearing about it, and now, of course, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about, some of the history and, how you got into it, what excited you about computer science, and then how you got into AI, how you got into the medical field as well.
Sure. So I grew up sort of like with a screwdriver in my hand, so to speak. I was one of those kids who liked to figure out how everything works and fix everything in the house. And, if anything broke in the house, my mom would first ask me to see if I can fix it. And if I couldn't fix it, then she would call the plumber or the electrician or whoever, right? So I always had a knack for engineering. I was also always fascinated by medicine and biology. And I just always had like a natural curiosity to figure out how things work. In the physical level and the mechanical level, like since I was sort of very little. Influenced, I guess, both my parents. My dad was a mathematician, computer scientist who, started, I grew up in Greece, a company there, so a little bit of an entrepreneur as well. My mom is a medical doctor and neonatologist. I was always influenced by her as well, but I could never see myself dealing with little kids as my profession. I am not becoming a pediatrician. That is not happening, But I was equally fascinated by both. I grew up in the dinner table hearing stories about, medicine and little kids who were in the NICU and what it took for doctors to revive kids who were, at danger, and also innovative technologies from my dad and being naturally inclined and curious about how things work. I was kind of always torn between the two. And at some point, and when we'll get to the point that we decide what we actually want to do with our lives in college, and things like that, I thought to myself, well, if I go to medicine, that's going to take forever, right? Like I have to go to regular school, then medical school, then residency, then fellowship. Dude, it's going to be like such a long time until I'm out of school and I have a regular life, right? And I have like a job and a salary. So I said, well, if I go to engineering, I think life's going to be quicker. I can just like plow through, be done, and be good. So I went to engineering with the intent to kind of work with my dad at the time, who was having a business in Greece where I grew up. And one thing led to another, and I pursued sort of graduate work in the US, at which point during my PhD, I had a fellowship. And in order to keep the fellowship and the financial assistance that came to it, I had to be involved with research. I had to help my professor who I was doing my PhD with, in his research lab. And still my plan was to go back and do the business and the whole Greek thing and everything. But it was, when I started getting involved with research, it was the sort of first time in my life that I kind of felt on my own without sort of third-party influences that
Mm.
This is what I want to do when I grow up. And the research that my professor was doing was related to medical imaging. So the fact that it brought in medicine that I was always fascinated by, and I didn't really have to go to medical school to do it, well, I could still follow my natural kind of tendencies in engineering and my, natural curiosities around those lines. I really felt like this is what I want to be when I grow up, so to speak. One thing led to another, kind of opportunities came up. I finished my PhD at Temple University in Philadelphia. I went to University of Pennsylvania to do postdoctoral training. Here where I was not wanting to go to med school because I'd been in like school forever and I kind of maxed out like everything, like in terms of being in school. And then I joined the faculty at Penn and started my career there as an independent investigator.
Wow. That's a really cool path. It was cool that you were able to combine the two things, or that you were pursuing one thing and the pull of the medical piece of it kept drawing you in.
Yes.
And how
So
did you
then,
make? Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead, Peter.
No, it's just I'm really fascinated by how. Okay, I see how both sides came together in your
Yes.
formation. Now, how did we land on AI? How did that come into? How did that become your focus?
Right. I studied computer science. That's my undergrad, computer engineering and informatics in Greece. I did my undergrad there. And then when I came here, the PhD was in computer and information systems. So I was a computer scientist by training. And, there are different directions one could take in that field. There's more of a hardware kind of expertise. There's more of a, all kinds of different aspects. But the work that my professor was doing, and I was kind of attracted to, had to do more with software and image processing, medical image processing. And so we call it AI now, but really this field has been around for a very long time. And in the field of medical imaging, we used to call this like computer vision, pattern recognition, medical image analysis, but a lot of the fundamentals of what we call now AI used to be there. Like my first book around neural networks was in fact in my undergrad in Greece and it was written in Greek. So it's been around for a long time. So when you're in this discipline, you kind of choose a direction. You want to be more hardware focused. So I was thinking like, do I want to be making computers, and things like that, like hands-on as a computer scientist. A big direction at that time was the beginning of the internet, and all that stuff was like network protocols. How does, what gave rise to internet and bandwidth? Do I want to, be the kind of person who puts together wires and thinks about network architecture? I'm like, nah, not really. So this was a little bit more, at least for me, although I could totally see myself going on the hands-on direction because I really, really love the screwdriver, experience. This was kind of that combined the sort of more scientific pursuit, so to speak. There's engineering and there's science, and there's an overlap, right? But engineering is a little different than science. I think this allowed me to also pursue scientific inquiry in addition to engineering. And I always had that as a person. I was driven by figuring out how things work.
And now you're taking data points, right, systemically and also from medical imaging, and you're making predictions. And so the software you've developed makes these predictions. Is that right?
Yes. So basically, I do a whole bit of different things. So my fundamental expertise as a computer scientist working in imaging and medical imaging is to take medical imaging data. So CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays, you name it, everything, and develop the computer science algorithms, the techniques to analyze this data, to extract information from this data, information that's not routinely assessed by the clinician, right? So we can quantify things, we can measure how big is your hippocampus, in this field, me and cancer, we can identify where is a cancer, what type of cancer it is, how big is the tumor, the volume, whatever, all kinds of other properties, and develop the algorithm so that the computers can do that automatically. That's like my fundamental bread and butter expertise. Now, beyond that, what I became fascinated is, okay, what do we do with this information, right? You can kind of calculate all kinds of things from the data. I'm excited to kind of try to predict what will happen in the future. So I'm not as focused about like the diagnostic piece. I mean that we have radiologists, we have doctors, they do that pretty well. I want to be able to like predict what will happen in the future and use that information to better tailor your care now. So if you are a healthy individual, are you at high risk of developing a certain cancer? What are the implications of that? What can we do to prevent, to reduce your risk? How should we screen you if there's a cancer that screening is available? If there's a cancer that screening is not available, can we use this information to say, maybe this is a good opportunity to start thinking about how do we screen these individuals that are at high risk, for example, ovarian cancer, which is an area I'm working on, right? More recently. There's no screening for women for ovarian cancer. Why is that? Okay. There are a lot of reasons why, but can we use some of these technologies to maybe enable that? There are some questions, right? If you have a cancer, how likely is it to come back? How likely it is to recur? What's the timeline? Based on that information, how aggressive do we need to go with treatment? And if you are in treatment, are you responding? Will this drug help you fully respond or not? And if not, what could be other drugs that we could add in the equation, right? So I'm interested in predicting the future, and in doing that, we use computer algorithms and artificial intelligence now to get information from the imaging data, but also plug in other data. Because think about it, right? When you go to a doctor, good morning, Jamie, what's going on today? I have this, I have that, and it's hurting here, whatever. I did an x-ray, I did this. So the doctor will take this information, they're going to look at the x-ray, they're going to ask you a question about how you feel about things. They're going to look at your family history. They're going to look at what medications you take. They're going to look how old you are. It's going to be a different thing if you're 40, if you're 50, and if you're 80, and how they're going to approach your treatment. It's going to be a different thing if there are a bunch of comorbidities they have to think about. So I use artificial intelligence to basically do that, collect all the data, weigh the pros and cons, and come up with a prediction that is tailored to your individual needs. How do we need to treat Jamie today based on who Jamie is today versus how do we need to treat Peter today versus based on who Peter is, even if they have the same exact thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And so right now, a lot of the information exists in silos. And
Yes.
even though there are portals now and one doctor sees a test from another doctor and that's helping, but what you're trying to do is have AI begin to process all this information.
Yes.
And then always have it there. It could be in the portal or in some report or whatever. And then better action could be taken.
Yes, and make it better for them, make it easier, because really in this day and age, how much time does a doctor have when you go see them, right? Not that much. So I want to do the laundry for them, have everything ready, right? So when you go there, all this information is on their fingertips, and they can better make decisions for you when you are at the point of care. That's the goal,
Yeah.
That's what we aspire to do with this research.
My brain is like coming up with a bazillion questions for you, but the one that I'm very fascinated to know is, without, you don't necessarily have to reveal too much, but have there been certain circumstances where this data has been really, and your use of AI and the data has been really instrumental in saving lives? And are you willing, maybe you want to share a story or two without feeling too much, where
We are still in the
impact, or is it more a general overarching thing that's happening?
yes and no. We're in the early days, right? We have not yet materialized the impact that could be done for a host of reasons. Not necessarily because we don't have the technology, for legal implications, for workflow implications, from cost implication, from insurance implications, all kind of things. I could talk about that forever. But there are circumstances where AI is helping today help to make things better. For example, there are tools that a neurosurgeon can use to visualize the tract of the brain when they're doing a surgery, for example, to extract a glioblastoma or a tumor, another type of tumor in the brain. There's one thing to do the extraction, but the thing is, what's the collateral damage when you do that? So by trying to extract a tumor, are you going to, damage like language? Are you going to damage other function based on where the tumor is? Because you have to go in there and cut things to get tumors out, right? So you can use AI to take pictures of the brain, before the surgery, map the tracts of the brain, label them for their different functionality, and live process during the time of the surgery, guide the surgeon on how to do the surgery as best as possible, minimizing the potential damage, right? There's AI that can, for example, in one of the areas I've been working on is predicting the risk of developing breast cancer using information from images such as mammographic density and family history and genetics, combining that information, and that can help inform women to seek screening, more frequent screening, for example, for high-risk women, a supplemental screening with additional imaging techniques such as MRI or breast ultrasound, and so forth. So in radiation treatment, AI and computer-guided techniques are helping focus the radiation treatment as much as possible in the area of the tumor, while sparing other organs from the collateral damage of radiation. Because, so there's a lot of applications that are being used. We can predict which patients in emergency care or in the ICU may develop sepsis, and how to monitor these patients more closely. There's a lot of applications, and I think more and more applications will be coming out in that aspect.
And so what to what degree are you working also then with the hospital, and
Very closely.
Any of your work, is that starting to make its way into use?
Absolutely, very closely. And that's why, sometimes a lot of my colleagues ask me, why, I'm a computer scientist, and my employer is a radiology department. I work for a radiology department. I'm not in engineering. I don't teach classes. I don't teach computer science. I don't do any of that stuff that a traditional computer science professor would do. So I'm a little bit of a hybrid and a bit of an outlier in my field. It's exactly because of that reason, because I want to be in the source of the data, and I want to be, in daily interaction with clinicians. Otherwise, my work is, it will keep me going. It'll give me publications. It will give me, what academics need to get promoted and whatever. But it's not going to make a difference in anything. So that's another thing I've always been driven as an individual, seeing life a little bit from a more kind of philosophical perspective and try to find meaning in my life. For me, making an impact is a very important aspect of how I find meaning in my life. And so through my work, through my, I don't like compartmentalizing my life either very much. I don't see my life as oh, this is my work life, this is my home life, this is my this life, this is my other life. My life is my life. There's one life. I have one life, and it's here and now. And my drive, since again, this also were some of the things I've always felt very strongly since I was a kid, has been to make a difference. When I'm gone, is it important that Despina was around or not? That's important to me.
It's a very healthy outlook. Do you see, just changing gears a hair? It's strange. We want to know your predictions about what AI will be predicting for the future. How much AI will be incorporated into the medical field compared to where it is right now? Do you see it the trajectory
Yeah.
going sky high everywhere, or is it it's still a balancing act? I'm very
I
fascinated to
think
know.
in general, in our life, in this society, AI will take over fully. Is a tsunami. It's happening, and we haven't even gotten into quantum computing yet. Wait until we get there. I don't know if our generation will fully see the fruition of that. I think our kids, for sure, it's going to be nothing that you've ever imagined. I think a complete revolution, like the Industrial Revolution, is going to be a completely new era. Healthcare, I think, is going to be one of the areas that's going to be most resistant. It will penetrate, will take a while. I'll tell you why, because of all the legal, insurance, and workflow considerations, right? So let's say I have an AI tool right? Let's say I have this tool, which I have it. I make it freely publicly available for anybody to use it. You can download it, use it at your home if you wish. That can measure your mammographic density from a mammogram and can tell you some, information about the risk of developing breast cancer. Let's say I have it. Okay. Let's say I even make it free available. Let's say we put it in the hospital. First of all, you have the FDA approvals, all of that. That landscape is evolving, all of that. But I'm not in that business. I'm not in the business of FDA approval. So someone has to get it. Somebody has to be interested in like a company or somebody picking it up. There's a caveat with FDA that if it is within our homegrown environment, we can put our tools in. So I'd say at Columbia, I can put it in, but I can't put it at like other hospitals, right? Okay. Let's say somebody picks it up. Let's say we solve that problem, which is a big problem. Who's going to pick it up and actually do that kind of path to commercialization, translation, FDA approvals, all of that stuff, figure that out. Okay. And let's say that the tool is even fully validated, because when I'm in the lab, I do my discovery on a certain, population, a sample size, I don't do it to the universe, right? So if I'm going to use it for the entire US population or Europe or Asia, who knows where it's going to go, we need to do more work to make sure it works for that data as well. So let's say we solve these problems. Let's say we also solve the problem of a commercial partner being interested to pick that up and move it forward, okay? Which are all those two are pretty big problems, right? So let's say we solve them. Then we get to the hospital. A health system is a financial institution, right? So there are a ton of implications. So let's say I'm the doctor and they give me this tool. This is going to take me more time to do my job because I have to do my assessment and then I have to check in what the AI tool says and then I have to wait with my assessment and I have to figure it out. So if it takes me 5 minutes, a minute, I don't know how much to read a mammogram, it could be that this will double the time that I need to do my job. Okay. What does it bring in? Does it reduce the workload that I do? Let's say it says something, right or wrong, who takes the legal liability? Who's responsible? Is it the doctor responsible or the AI tool or the hospital? How does insurance play out? If I'm a doctor with AI, does insurance compensate me more because I use the AI and I spend more time doing my job and blah, blah, blah? Or it doesn't compensate me? Does it bring more business in the hospital or less business? So there's so many questions. How much is the license? If the hospital is going to pay X money to get a license for all its doctors to use my tool, that's a lot of money. How do they make up for it, right? What is the return of investment for them to use these tools? And I will say, and I say to all my colleagues, I still don't have this answer. And part of me is kind of thankful that I'm not in that business. I'm in the business of like the scientific discovery. So I don't, I don't have to worry as much for my day job about this, but I worry existentially, like if all I do becomes a gimmick on the website that somebody can use to have some fun, like what are we doing here, right? So, but I keep asking my colleagues who are in the healthcare systems, who are like, CFOs, whatever, in a health institution, like, have you seen an AI tool that has made a return on investment for the institution that adopted it? I do not know yet of an AI tool that has delivered a concrete ROI. And I think there's a lot of effort right now, all these companies that are trying to commercialize these things to kind of measure the impact of these tools within a healthcare system on patients, on the logistics of healthcare, right? And so until we work that out, I think there's going to be a lot of resistance from healthcare institutions. The appetite is there, but the implementation is just tough. And so eventually there's going to be a lot of pressure in the system because non-traditional, I think, healthcare systems are going to invade this space. So, like
Right.
Amazon's, Google's, all of these folks, like they see the value and they're structuring healthcare models that are very different than a traditional healthcare system in a hospital. And that is going to take away a lot of care from the conventional healthcare systems, I think, because of the AI. So they see the value, and because the way the traditional healthcare system is built now, it's like a complex, archaic institution. Like to go there and inject this technology is so disruptive. But if you're starting from scratch and you're going with this from the beginning, you say, I'm going to use this from the beginning. I'm going to have fewer doctors. I'm going to, streamline all the patient communication through it. If you build it from the beginning with that in mind, that's a whole different story, right? You can make it used to your advantage, and you can have, I think, a substantial return on investment from the get-go. And so I think eventually there's going to be enough pressure build up in the system that they will have to go that way to also absorb some of the cost of healthcare that is increasing. There's going to be a lot of changes right now in healthcare insurance reimbursements, and health systems are going to be under immense pressure to become sustainable and viable. And so I think that's where AI is going to come in and catalyze a lot of aspects, and that's where are going to start seeing the adoption of these tools becoming more broad.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up, was that what role will the private sector play? And it could just be an upending it completely, democratizing it, so to speak, or, taking an industry that's ripe for change, for disruption. And yeah, if they start from scratch, then they don't have any of those issues to deal with. Going outside of the insurance system, came to mind as well. So yeah, a lot of different scenarios. So it's interesting that you brought that up.
It's already begun in a way with like a lot of online virtual care.
Yes, exactly.
Companies that, it's cheaper for them rather than, and the liabilities are different.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. You mentioned like if there was a company or an organization that began with this model in mind, it would change the game. That's pretty
completely
wild.
It would change the game. Yes.
Yeah.
What about the international approach? I know many countries, like in Europe or around the world, don't have our, for lack of a better term, capitalist insurance-based health care. They have health care. Do you see any difference between, let's say, European countries adopting this kind of AI or other countries around the world? Or are we the leader here and it has been coming out of this area?
I think Europe specifically, from what I hear, the regulatory framework is even more complicated than here.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing it coming out of Europe. I don't know about Asia though. I think there's a good chance they could be more innovative than we are in that sense, because they need it, and there's also, they don't have as many doctors as we do, and so they look up to some of these technologies to help alleviate some of the problem, the fact they don't have enough physicians to take care of everybody. So I'm not sure, but I'm not seeing it coming out of Europe in my view. I think here will happen eventually.
Say again?
Here will happen, with the next like 5 to 10 years. And then I think when that starts happening, we're going to see some more advancements from quantum computing. And then everything we know will be different. I mean, that is going to be the real revolution. If I was a student now, that's what I would be doing my PhD.
What makes that so special, I guess, compared to where we are?
Everything you know will be different. Everything you know, everything we have known about computers will collapse and change. So quantum computers are based on the principles of quantum physics. Where basically and I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but basically what quantum physics is telling us is that not more than one states are possible to exist at the same time in between matter and energy. Regular computers are based on the binary logic. Whatever we do in the computer's programming, however you want to call it, when you go down to the chip level, it's all 0 and 1. That's it. On or off. 0 and 1 in your interconnections of hardware, whatever. All the software we do, everything, when it boils down, when it breaks down to the hardware level, it's all 0 and 1. But that's not going to be the case anymore, right? And that is the fundamental limit of how much computers can compute. Because at the end of the day, it's all 0 and 1. You can't be both 0 and 1 at the same time. But now, at the hardware level, 0 and 1 can coexist at the same time, and multiple calculations can be happening at the same time. So, things that would be computationally not even possible could happen in minutes or seconds. So this is going to blow up everything as we know, completely blow up everything as we know.
Yeah. Do you
I
see
wish I
any?
was around to see it. I don't think we'll be around to see it, but I wish.
Well, I mean, it definitely is discussed a lot, but what I guess separating the hype or the sort of future outlook of it versus the reality of it. But I know a lot of companies are preparing for it and working on it, and they keep saying it's going to happen soon. But
I
but
think
then to
so.
your point, how long would it then become more mainstream, et cetera, et cetera? But then I just read an article where there would be a concern even about the electrical grid.
It's
Do
going
we
to be
have
insane.
do we have the electrical grid to actually support all that? You know?
Well, things will change. Whenever, once upon a time, a computer was an entire room, and now it's in your pocket, right? So
Yeah,
we will evolve. It's going to be disruptive. Everything, it's just that's the nature of human evolution. Not the first time, not the last time that something like that happened.
yeah. And do you see like even some of the medical technology making its way into the home? Like I
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
see the cons and the danger of this, but could someone, give themselves an x-ray or give themselves some sort of scan, right? It's a part of maybe a household piece of equipment or something.
think so. I think so. I'm all for it. Don't tell me there's no danger of being in the hospital. You go with like, a one type of thing and you come up with five others, right? So there is dangers in both.
Yeah,
Wherever there's human nature involved, there are risks.
yeah,
Because, in my view, we're the ones who always mess up everything.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think all these things will happen. Absolutely. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I mean, because that's really, it's like democratization. You see this access to things and, down to the individual level is just what has been happening over and over and over again. Um, so you brought up scanning and trying to predict. So we talked a little bit about using the AI to sort of draw all this information together, doing the laundry for the doctor, as you were saying. How about like scanning and using, predictive metrics and doing some sort of preventative treatment? Like, I do not have a tumor today, but chances are, because of my family history, maybe there are genetic tests also, and then maybe now AI is picking up something because of my age or something. Maybe I have inflammation in my body or whatever it is. I'm then all of a sudden red flag. You might develop a tumor somewhere. Like, are you also doing that sort of predictive, work?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to have these discussions, because through interventions, lifestyle interventions, I'm
Mm,
not saying we're going to like totally prevent cancer or whatever, but, the impact we could have on healthcare by lifestyle interventions, battling obesity, well-being, and so forth, hypertension, all of these factors that a lot are based on lifestyle and some genetics. I'm not like saying just all like lifestyle, but you know, we can have a, you know, impact on public health that is could have more impact than, for example, all cancer therapies combined, right? So, and so I think it's important to have these discussions around prevention, and and for people to be um, open to the idea of if they want that in their lives to have that information. Like, I have a lot of discussions with friends or colleagues. I like, I'm the person who likes to know, right? I want to do genetic testing. I want to know what's going on. And they're like, why do you want to know if you're going to have like Alzheimer's? Well, I want to know because I want to be on the lookout, for example, right? Like there's a whole bunch of therapies now in development, preventative things, lifestyle interventions. If nothing else, I want to prepare myself.
mhm.
I think it's important to have that information and have these conversations.
As you're saying that, I'm just thinking about a family member I had who he's since passed, but he had a certain condition and he got a scan back, and the doctor said to him, "Hey, I've got good news. Your This measurement did not go down anymore in the last month." And so he celebrated by going out to have the biggest dinner and eating everything he shouldn't have eaten in his celebratory meal. And I said to him, "What are you doing? The doctor said this isn't in your diet. This isn't in your diet. You're not supposed to eat this. You got to have more broccoli. What are you doing?" And he goes, "Hey, I got great news. I had the prediction came back that I haven't lost any more of that thing, and this is great. And it's funny, you can lead the horse to water with a lot of this information, but you can't make that horse drink the water. So with humanity, it's interesting that AI can make these predictions, and then we may just go in and mess it right up. We may just go in and you know. So do you find that? I mean, do you see that battle playing out?
I see it. I don't know if I see it as a battle. I'm a huge believer in personal choice and personal responsibility. There's a very good argument of, you know, extending life, okay, as a concept. I want you to prevent these things and that because I want you to live longer. Okay. How much value does that have to the individual? Maybe if some person wants to live a certain way, it'll be shorter. I respect that. Or they want to eat this all day, they eat all this all day. Like, what can I tell you? I'm just going to give you the information. You do what you feel is appropriate for you to do. I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to force you to do anything. I'm very against like forcing in that sense. But I do think it's important to have the information and whatever choices we make in our lives to be conscious, aware, well informed choices. And then if your strategy is an exit strategy, that's on you.
Yeah, I think there's it is on you, and I think different people. I mean, I've heard people say, like, in the mental health community, that there's actually an overwhelming amount of information now about our health, and you have these sort of biohackers, these influencers that spend almost every minute of their day doing something that is extending their life, or fighting
Oh,
against
yeah.
shortening their life. And that's great. That's one extreme. But then, some people that, maybe have anxiety issues are beginning, am I drinking enough water? Am I exercising enough? Am I getting enough hours of sleep? Am I meditating? Is my cortisol levels too high? Are my cortisol levels too high? And so yeah, there can be an overwhelming amount of information. But I guess then at that point, each person has to deal with it and pick and choose what they want to incorporate into their lives. I guess to that, this is making me think to ask the question of, like, does this add an even more overwhelming amount of information to the person? It's just like, hey, the information's there. Each individual deals with it. Is that what it is? Like, or is there some other thing here? Anything else that you'd have to add to something like that type of future?
I can only speak for myself and my own experience, right? And at the end of the day, I'm not even a doctor. I'm just a computer scientist and an engineer. I personally like the information. I don't feel overwhelmed by the information. But I think, you know, one of the things we don't do very well in our society is to teach people in our educational system, whatever, it's very like how to use their brain, right? We are very kind of like information focused, like you have to learn things, but we don't really teach people how to use their brain. In what sense? Like, a lot of what just talked about is like how you suffer from your own brain,
Mm.
like how you can't even untangle your own thoughts, how you let your brain drag you down in any direction, and how we live our lives in autopilot by this dragging of our brain and our emotions. They pull us in any direction. And we have not developed the ability and the skill to pause and be the masters of our own brain, of our own emotions, and at the end of the day, in our own destiny. We are just like being dragged along, right? So I think, so from my perspective, I like information. I want to know. That's always been my thing. Like I always want to know. I don't care. I want to know. I don't care the cost. I want to know. But I think it's important to, as a society, to develop the skills to use our brains and our emotions in a constructive, healthy, life-sustaining way. We don't do that. Most of what we suffer from is our own thoughts and our own emotions about something that doesn't even exist, like either something that has happened in the past or something that we think that will happen in the future, but we very rarely are present in the present moment.
Yeah.
So
Very.
that takes us in a very completely different kind of direction, this discussion. But the problem is not the information or the tools or whatever. Is how the problem is always us. It's us. Our individual response to what is happening. That is always the problem in our existence, right? I think, at least. And our ability to respond to what is happening. That, I think, is where we need to focus as a society and take control of our ability to respond in a conscious, aware, and health sustaining manner. That is my view.
Yeah, it's well said. I think it involves a little bit of Taoism, a little bit of Buddhism.
A little bit of all of it,
Yeah, the thought comes in, the thought leaves, right? And it also makes me think about, going back to what you said earlier, there's a bit of like change management here that needs to happen as you introduce this new thing. And we talked about introducing it to the health system, but even introducing it to doctors, anyone using this medical information, and then introducing it even to the people, the patients and stuff. So the change management piece is, how do we use this information, either as a practitioner or as the patient receiving it. And that change management piece, that's where like disruption comes in, and disruption is successful when the change management part goes well. When it doesn't go well, that's when it gets all kind of clunky. So, I mean, do you ever have those types of discussions in terms of like, okay, now we're introducing this new thing, what's going to be the resistance to it? How do we get over that resistance? That's a change management. It's an organizational, it's a behavioral thing.
Exactly. We have these discussions all the time. And again, as I said, I'm just the engineer, guys. I am making the gadgets and bringing them to the doorstep. That is my expertise, my training, my job, my calling, my thing. I make the gadgets and bring them to your doorstep. But I think the process of evaluating whether or not something should actually be used by a physician, should actually be communicated to the patient, that's a whole different scientific field. Like, there is what we call like implementation science, comparative effectiveness science, outcomes research. There are actual experts about this. And we kind of bypass that whole thing. We bypass that thing. We just take it from me, the engineer. What do I know? And try to like shove it in, in the face of the health system or the hands of the physician. We bypass the whole process, folks. Like, we need to engage these experts to do their job, right? And we need to work together. Like, I'll give you the gadget, you take this gadget, see if it makes sense or not. If you have some feedback, give it back to me. I'll tweak it, I'll change it, I'll do whatever it takes, and then the health system needs to be communications. Like, there needs to be an understanding that at the end of the day, we need to do this to better our society and healthcare and help patients at the end of the day, right? If this is not our goal, we will fail as a society in this. And so we need to have these kind of open communications and coordination between people like me, people who are in the middle, and people who are on the other side, to be able to successfully bring this to help us as humanity, right?
And you're currently using, or rather, you created this kind of system, and you're working with AI to make certain predictions about specifically certain cancers and whatnot. But I recall in an earlier conversation we had, you're also looking at it in terms of like maybe predicting Alzheimer's.
Yeah, not me, my colleagues, right? I work in cancer specifically. My colleagues of mine, like, yes, this is a field, kind of the predictive.
Generally, overall, to
exactly.
Right. I'd love to hear a little more about what you see that future looking like, or what that looks like.
I think there are similar considerations across the board. If it's cancer, or it's Alzheimer's, if it's cardiac disease, if there's similar trends and similar work happening across the board, and we have the data, the technology, the expertise to develop these technologies and these tools that can help us personalize care. And so again, the question becomes, what are the barriers, the opportunities, and we need to decide as a society, how do we want to, you know, use these technologies? I think it's up to us to decide collectively what we want to do with it.
Do you really think it's up to us to decide, or do you think it's the financial impact
I
that
know
really is
life
going
is
to decide
complicated
for us?
and there's all kinds of interests, guys. But again, from my perspective, if we don't all take personal responsibility, we are doomed. It's very easy to say it's somebody else's fault. That doesn't help anybody. It's our collective individual responsibility that's responsible for everything. We vote, we elect the people who govern us, we buy products, we don't buy products, we invest. This whole thing, I've never been a person who like, oh, it's like the they, right? They wanna do this. Who are they? It's us. I don't know this day. I've never seen this day. Have you seen this
No,
day? Like,
well,
so I think we all have to take personal responsibility. There's no other way out.
but in this polemic, we're discussing the possibility of, let's say, I don't want to say names, but a large company, Amazon or Google, or any large company could just jump the shark here, take this technology, and try to force its hand into healthcare for the financial benefits.
Are you the end user of this? They all depend on us. They all depend on the end user, who they're depending on, who they're going to sell it to. It's your money and my money, and who's going to pay for this, right? Who's going to pay for it? So we don't diminish the role of personal responsibility. It is the only way out. The only way out, I think.
All right. Well, Despina, as we look to wrap up here, is there anything that we didn't ask or anything that you would want to make sure to add?
I think the future's bright if we want to make it bright. The future can be very doom and gloomy if we want to make it doom and gloomy. History has shown that, us humans are probably the worst kind on the planet, but it has also shown that we're probably the best kind on the planet as well. So I think it's up to us to decide how we want to flip that coin.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody in their daily lives to take personal responsibility for everything that they do, as little as or big, of whatever they're doing. Every moment counts, I think, in this game.
Yeah. I think that's a really good message because, of course, we didn't really touch upon this, but there's always these like end of the world scenarios with AI and Terminator,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
missiles launching. And it's interesting because, we talked about Asia, and the Asian cultures tend not to have that mythology. And the Western cultures tend to have that mythology that the robots are going to rise up and take us over. And, I don't know who's right there, but you're sort of saying that the individuals have the responsibility and they have the wherewithal and they have the control really in the end.
Show me a time in human history where robots were not taking over. Quote, robots. Where there was peace and prosperity and that everybody was in la la land. Human history is, continuously in turmoil, mayhem, wars, this disaster. Like, show me a time in human history where this does not exist. So I think there's a little bit of a hype there. And at the end of the day, if the robots take over and destroy us, we probably deserved it, because we let them do it.
We were asking for it.
But I also have a perspective. Why are we always doom and gloom? Like the robots are going to be like the worst of us. There's a fair chance that may be the best of us.
It may be the best. Yeah.
I think we're totally capable of destroying this planet without any help from the robots. It's very clear. We don't need the robots to self-destruct. I think we're doing a great job at it as it is. So who knows? Maybe the robots are going to save us because they might tap into the best of our intelligence. That's another flip side of the story. So
that's a scenario. So I like the positive outlook. I like that, a message of control, take control. And Despina, it's been fascinating. We learned so much here. And we're probably going to have to come back and talk to you some more because we still have, I think, 1,000 questions. But I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And let's get together again before the robots come, okay?
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.